Ella, this book is a departure from your last book, your debut, The Parisian, which was this epic historical fiction. And I remember that when you first sent me the proofs for Enter Ghosts, I told you that this would be the first fiction book that I read about Palestine in English that's set in the contemporary. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit about that departure and how it felt to go from writing a historical story to a more contemporary one that obviously, you know, you can relate to. Yeah, I mean, well, the first one was very, I guess, you know, you have to do your kind of historical legwork, and it was based on a lot of oral histories, and it, you know, that took many years. So I think that my experience so far, by the time I finished writing a book, I got another one kind of ready to go, sort of, and I think I was just kind of itching to write something contemporary. So I set it in the year that I started, which was 2017, and obviously I kind of want to do something where I didn't really need to do research in the same way, have a break from that. Does that make sense? So as you already pointed out, Enter Ghosts sort of centres around the production of a play in the West Bank, and within the book, some of the chapters actually read like a script, a play script. Can you tell us about why you did that? Yeah, I mean, I think I wanted to mine the theatre metaphor, or the kind of as a construct in many different ways. I think that you know, the idea for the book came from a film. Well, I mean, my interest in theatre in Palestine began with Juliana Merchamis's film Arna's Children, which is about his mother who established a theatre school for children in Jenin refugee camp. And I saw that when I was quite young, and I became interested in theatre as a possible way of resisting, but also as a kind of an art form that is live, that is potentially spontaneous, that can be volatile, that has to do with bodies occupying spaces. And I think that it allowed me to depict colonial structures, the kind of performativity of colonialism, which I think in people are wearing costumes is something very theatrical, often about the structure of the Israeli colonial project. So I wanted to explore it in lots of different manifestations in the book, and so it seemed sort of obvious that at some point I would also write in the play script. So I do that when they go into rehearsals. It also serves a technical function, because when you write a novel in the first person, you're stuck in this voice the whole time. So it allowed me to kind of have a moment where Sonia recedes totally and just becomes one of many voices in the room. And then I can get all these voices in the room having these kind of this banter and this dialogue without those sort of clogging bits of he said, she said, and who's moving where. And you also use the play, the function of the play, to sort of display the myriad Palestinian identities and complexities. You know, so in the book, one of the main characters, Maryam, is a 48er, Palestinian citizen of Israel. And the other actors in the play are sort of this whole sort of motley crew of characters with very different identities and backgrounds. Can you talk to us a bit about that? Yeah, it's like a fantasy. You know, it's like a fantasy of Palestinians from all legal statuses and backgrounds coming together and doing a project together. You know, it's kind of like, it's sort of obvious what that stands in for. But I mean, with the exception of Gaza, I didn't think it was realistic to have a character from Gaza in the play if it was going to be within the West Bank happening. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to explore those interactions. I think I'm always interested in how Palestinians relate to other Palestinians. I think there's an appetite in the West for narratives in English that are all always about Palestinians relating to Israelis, and I just I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in intra-Palestinian dynamics as a source of drama and interest and good storytelling. I think you do that in the book so well. You know, the character development, the development of the relationships between the characters. You avoided this tendency to present Palestinian characters as these perfect, you know, heroic victims of colonialism. We're not perfect. We have a lot of contradictions and tensions in our lives, and I think that was really well demonstrated through the character of Sonia. And maybe you can tell us more about Sonia, maybe more about sort of character development in general when you're writing, but also about relationships.
there's a lot of different relationships in the book, but one of the ones that stands out the most, definitely, at least for me, was Sonia and her sister, Haneen. And I think that particular relationship, you managed to explore all these different kinds of tensions that exist between Palestinians, with their many complex identities. Sonia, sort of is this more sort of diaspora Palestinian character, whereas Haneen is, someone who's returned. She speaks Arabic much better than Sonia, even Hebrew, so there's that dynamic. And I think you also use it to sort of show, tensions between 48ers and West Bankers. So that's, all of that is to say that I think when reading those conversations between Sonia and Haneen, you managed to pull out all these different tensions. So I asked you 2 questions in one.
With a compliment, thank you. What were the 2 questions? I don't know, we'll freestyle. Character development and relationships. Yeah, so I mean the novel kind of centres around sort of the 3 women, really, how they relate to each other. So Sonia relating to her sister Haneen. She's come back for the summer to stay with Haneen. She's come out of a bad relationship and is having a little bit of a crisis as an actor working in London. And she wants her older sister to kind of mother her. There's sort of women mothering each other in the book. There's a spectre of motherhood, being a mother, not being a mother. And Haneen is having her own problems. So this is the kind of source of the drama when she arrives. And then it's a great deal of the book is about how she relates to Mariam, the theatre director, where Sonia feels very lost. Mariam has a real sense of mission, like she really knows what she's doing, and has a strong sense of political purpose in her art making. I'm really interested in where interiority and political action meet, and making novels out of that. And I think that one major way to explore that is through relationality with people, with other people, with other characters, and also the ways in which family and early family experiences are formative, not only psychologically but also politically. I think that those elements are very important in the development of the kind of political sense of self. So that's sort of central to the family drama, the kind of nuclear family drama of the Nasser family.
I don't want to ask you too much about the content of the book, because I don't want to give it away for everyone who hasn't read it yet. But so perhaps we can move on maybe to more sort of general questions about writing about Palestine, being Palestinian, what that means for you. Why do you think it's important? I mean, it's a very general question, but I think it's one that sometimes we don't get asked, or is taken for granted as Palestinian writers.
I think my writing self was part of my. I started writing when I became politicised. I think the 2 things are very related for me, and I think that a lot of my literary project is finding the ways in which aesthetics and politics intersect and interact. I think of Kanafani as a good model for that, that he says he was a novelist first and a revolutionary second, but those 2 things are an indivisible case for him. I think it's sort of seen, or it's almost a kind of commonplace in the West for ambiguity and ambivalence to be privileged as literary qualities. And I think that this is a kind of lie. I don't think it's true. I think that politically committed artwork can also contain ambiguity and complexity, and it doesn't undermine the nature of its political commitment. So I think that's kind of how, that's my way of answering that. Obviously, the other things, I think it's very important to tell stories about Palestine. I feel like I'm dealing with multiple audiences, and that's kind of presents certain kinds of concerns or things I think about in the writing, things I worry about in the writing. Does that answer the question? Yeah.
What about the emotional toll that takes on you?
Obviously it's very heavy material, but I guess I really believe in duty, actually. I think of it as obligation, duty, and I think I have a responsibility. So I think that's where it comes from. Not without angst. I think I have a lot of anxiety and angst about how the limits of how useful I can be, and also that it's the wrong way to think about writing, about writing fiction anyway, and that, once you release the novel, you can't control how it's received or what kind of effects it has. So it's this sort of kind of hope that you're participating in something that's just bigger than yourself, that, one book is just one of many, of a whole generation of people making art and stories and films and visual art, and that we're all together doing something en masse, and you can't put too much hope in a single piece of work doing anything in particular, especially as I think it's quite easy to be kind of co-opted by, it's easy to sort of subdue the political elements in a literary work more than with a non-fiction work. I found that even though so far the book's been very well received in Britain and America, there's a tendency to just kind of obscure the political elements, to sort of say, on a background of Middle East ferment, or to use the word Israel many times as a kind of compensatory editorial tick, and that is something it's dismaying but maybe predictable.
I'm very conscious our audience has been listening for a long time, so I do want to open this out in case anyone has any burning questions they would like to ask Ízabéla. Yeah.
I can shout, maybe.
Oh, you don't need to. We have some mics.
Thank you very much for inviting Ízabéla.